Hey guys, it's Vincent with Vasco Toys. Today I'm going to show you how to build this two-story diorama.
Vasco Toys. Action figure dioramas and props.
So what you're about to see is going to be part one of a vlog series, and I want you guys to let me know if you like the vlog, because I've never done one before. So please leave a comment, hit the like button. But basically the goal of this part is to basically just show you guys the structure of the build, and then in further parts we're going to do the detailing, we're going to do the painting, and you guys will see the full journey of me creating this diorama as much as I can possibly capture it. Before we get started, here is what I'm looking to build. I'm looking to build a diorama that has several different layouts for a customer called Carbon Scoring on YouTube. I didn't record myself carving out the concrete slabs in the base, but I did get myself texturing the piece, which you can see here, using a ball of tinfoil to get the concrete look that I'm looking for. Whenever I do this, I like to vary my pressure along the diorama base so that I can kind of show some different imperfections in the concrete, or maybe some impact craters, things like that. I think it adds to the piece. And so here what I'm doing is just going across the piece and finding those spots that I want to call out with some more pressure. And with the help of my 3D printer, I'm multitasking, printing some windows. Okay, so I am actually going to use these pieces, which just happen to be the perfect size for this. These were pieces that I created a while back as part of something that I thought I was going to get to but never did, a non-commissioned piece. But I really think they'll look good on both sides of this diorama. So all I have to do is create pieces that'll come all the way across, and then this is going to be the outline of the roof, and then we'll build it from there. So really quick, the pieces that I'm going to be using for this, they have these little seams in them, and I want this to look like one piece of concrete, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in with some of this lightweight wall spackle, which you guys have seen me use several times on the channel. This process is as simple as just taking some of the wall spackle and covering the cracks with whatever straight edge you have. I happen to be using an old gift card just because that's the easiest thing that I have lying around, but you could use other tools and accomplish this. I'm using 2-foot by 2-foot foam sheets from Home Depot for this project, and I'm about to move on to the walls, so I'm just checking that it's not too warped for me to use in the project, and I think we're good to go. Time to measure out the distance of how wide the walls are going to be based on how wide the trim pieces on the top are. So instead of just measuring it with a ruler, I've got the piece, so I measure against the piece. Pro tip, always use a fresh blade when you're going to make cuts in this foam. And I'm going to use that fresh blade with a drywall square that I have, which is the biggest T-square that will cover this 2-foot area. What you'll notice is that I'm going to do several passes with the knife to make sure I get the smoothest cut possible without any ridges or fraying. To make my life easier, I'm going to use the piece that I just cut and measure against the new piece that I need to cut, because I need two that are the same exact size. And so I'll just take my Sharpie and mark those spots. Just to be extra careful that I didn't measure against a side that wasn't square, I'm going to go ahead and just measure with the drywall T-square and make sure both of those spots I just marked are equal distance apart from the edge. Now that I know we're good to go on those measurements, I'm going to get my knife out and do the same process you guys saw before. Multiple passes to get the smoothest possible cut. I'm also trying to keep my knife at 90 degrees so that I get up a 90-degree seam, or close to a 90-degree seam. Let's do a little stack test. Take the 3 pieces we cut and make sure they're the same length and width. So just a little bit of a dry fit on this, and I wanted to just note to you guys, so I'm going to need to trim this wall because I want this to be the edge of the building, not this. So we need to make it so that this fits inside these two. And I also need to trim these down because this is taller than I want them to be. Still 24 inches tall, and I want this to be between 22, around 22, 23 inches. So we're going to trim that up next. Wanted to point something out real quick. On these 2x2 XPS foam sheets that I bought, there is always this rough side that you can hear it as I'm going across. Has sort of a rough finish to it. I don't want that on here. And there's also a little bit of damage up here. So what I'm gonna do to make sure that this piece fits inside those two is I'm gonna cut an inch off this side and most likely an inch off that side, or 2 inches off of just the one side. But I'm gonna use the proxxon this time because I really need to make sure that I have an exact 90-degree angle so that when we go to magnetize this, I don't have any problems. Pro tip, always use a fume mask when you're using a proxxon hot wire cutter. Just to be extra safe, I always run a fan as well with a window or door open to blow any fumes out with my mask, so protecting myself as best as I possibly can. Here I'm just lining up my cut with my shifting lands jig to make sure that I'm going to get a clean cut. If you're not familiar with this machine, it's called a proxxon hot wire foam cutting table. It allows you to make really, really precise cuts. You can change the angles, or you can do a straight cut like what I'm doing here. And it just makes things as perfect as you can possibly get them. I've got a couple of enhancements on my proxxon. So I mentioned I'm using a shifting lands jig. That's the piece that I'm holding with my left hand that you can see that's stabilizing. This is a much more versatile and reliable tool than the jig that comes with the machine. I'm also using a foot pedal so that I control the heat better during my cutting process. These are actually going to be some pretty important pieces of scrap foam for us. I'm going to hang on to these and you guys will see how I use them later on in the build. Alright, now you guys can see what I mean, that the edging of this is going to line up with where we carved the sidewalk blocks. So this runs this way, this runs that way. Now the next thing I'm going to do is adjust the height. So I'm going to use the proxxon to cut this down to about 22 inches all the way across. Then I'm going to make sure that all of the edges are square before we magnetize it. I want these walls to be 20 inches high, so I'm going to mark that here using the T-square again on 2 spots so that I'm ensuring that I have a straight and reliable line. This piece has 3 walls, so we have 3 walls to cut. The next thing we're going to do is magnetize the walls to each other. And we're going to use a hot glue gun on the low temperature setting. So there's high and low. We're going to use low to not melt the foam. We're going to use this copper tube. I can't remember the exact size of this, but it lines up with the exact size of the magnets we're using. We're using some heavy duty ceramic magnets that I get on Amazon. These things are great. I always use them, and we'll also use the X-Acto knife. I'm going to have, this is the front wall, this is the side wall here. I'm going to magnetize them together first, and then we'll get the third wall on there after these two together. I'm going to put 2 magnets in this, 2 magnets here, one here, and then another one here and here. So it'll be 4 total on this wall connecting them. And now I'm going to use the copper tubing. I'm going to puncture where I want the magnets to go. When I do this, I just move the tube back and forth to kind of create a cut in the foam. And you don't have to go down too deep because we're only going to go a little bit into the foam to magnetize the diorama. Now what I'm going to do is go the width of a magnet. So sometimes you can, if you want to, you can indent the side a little bit so you can see the slight indentation that I just made right here. And then just go ahead and cut with the X-Acto knife, cut that out. Then you get, this is the foam, we're going to put the magnet into where the foam was, right there, like that. We're going to hot glue it in. Do the same thing here. And there's a little bit of excess that I want to get out of here. Actually, this will be okay. Even though a little bit more came out than we wanted. That is okay. So now our hot glue gun is heated up, and I'm going to place the magnets in here. You'll see that this side of the magnet has a dot and this side doesn't. So with these magnets, the side that has the dot attracts to the side that does not. So that's what you want to keep in mind. So for these pieces, I'm going to have the dot facing up, and then on the opposite side, when we connect the piece, we'll have no dot that connects to these. So with this, you can do sort of like a little bit of a cross and insert your magnet, push it down. If there's excess, it's not super hot because it's low temp, so you can kind of just wipe it away. Sometimes it'll hurt a little bit, but that right there did not. Same thing here. Push it down. Let those set in place, and then we can test them out. Now, if we try to do the dot to the dot, you'll see it doesn't work. But if you do it the correct way, it works great. For this next part, you want to make sure you're working on a nice level surface. My workbench is pretty level, so I'm confident with it. And we are going to simply line these up so that the walls are flush to each other, and then I'm going to indent into the foam in both magnet spots so that you get a little indentation, which you guys can see here and here. Now we just need to do the same process that we used in the previous step with And so for this piece, this is going to be the outside facing part. This is going to be the inside of the diorama that we don't see. So I'm going to cut my indents on the top here. But I want to make sure that I don't go all the way through to the other side, because I don't want the X-Acto knife to poke through and be visible. I want to make sure that I cut level, which I didn't here, so I'm going to go back in and clean it up. And just before I glue them in permanently, just to test that I actually got it in the right spot, you can actually insert the magnets into the holes we just created and see if it looks the way you want. It's pretty much flush right here, which is what we're going for. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add these in. For this part, it's really just getting a little hot glue in here. I do one at a time. Make sure that the part that does not have the dot on it is facing outward, so it'll attract to the other wall, and then doing the same thing here. And sometimes if the glue spills over, I kind of just do a sweeping motion to clean it up into the hole. And then we can just test it out. You guys can see how strong those magnets are when they're lined up properly. They stick right together like that. Now, if you're wondering what we're going to do about this right here, we're going to wall spackle that, and you won't even be able to see it. Same thing with this, because we don't want that to be visible. Off camera, I put this all together, and here's how it's looking so far. I put a Marvel Legends Captain America in there just so you guys could see the size of it. I want these to be the same thickness, so I marked it with a red Sharpie again. And then it's back to the proxxon to get the thickness right for this piece. And I'm going to need 2 of them, so I'll cut the second one as well. Test fit, moment of truth, and we're good. Okay, so now that I have the diorama magnetized, or at least the walls magnetized to each other, and it's standing upright, I want to show you guys what I'm going to do on the inside. So we're going to create a roof that is going to be flush with all of the top of the pink areas that you're seeing. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this. I'm going to measure this out and put basically a spot for the foam to sit on top of. So I'll put one here and maybe one here, and then we can actually place the foam on top of these different columns or rows, and it'll sit right in there. So that's the next step. For all 3 of these pieces, I'm going to measure 1 inch down from the top wall because this is 1 inch foam and the roof piece is going to be that thick. I don't often actually draw permanent marker lines to mark things in my dioramas, but in this case I'm going to, since it's the inside of the diorama and it's going to be covered by a glued over piece. These lines will guide me as I glue. Now I just mark and cut these support beams. Time to glue these in place. As you can see, I already have the 2 longer beams in place, and I'm actually using the scraps from those cuts that I made earlier to do the more narrow wall in the middle, which is what I'm doing right here. Gluing those 2 pieces in place, and these are all going to serve as the spot that the roof will sit on top of securely. The roof area that we just created is going to be 16 inches by 17 inches. So I'm going in and just marking with the knife where those spots are and making those cuts, again using multiple passes to get through the foam. Another pro tip, you always want to make sure the anchored edges are always straight or 90 degrees. As you can see, Spider-Man is up on top of here. The way that we did this, you'll actually be able to get several figures up there securely, even some of the bigger ones. Alright, thanks for hanging with me for part 1 of the vlog. Stay tuned for part 2. We're going to start doing all the detail work, the brickwork, all of the design elements, the windows, doors, all that stuff is coming up in part 2.